Good news of the day. Jesus Christ died for our sins, and he has given you eternal life. He loves you infinitely, and he wants you to join him in eternal life in heaven with the Father and the Holy Spirit. You're valuable and important to him, and you have great worth in his eyes. In fact, you have an immeasurable worth in his eyes. If you're struggling or going through something hard right now, don't worry. You're going to get through it. You're really strong. Jesus loves you, and he's with you. He's ready to be accepted into your heart anytime you're ready. Ask for forgiveness for your sins and accept him as your Savior, and you will be saved. Please know how loved and cherished and special you are and how you're irreplaceable. You're a child of God. Stay strong and take care of yourself. Disclaimer. This video comes from a conservative Christian perspective. If you can't handle critical discussion of this series, or if this video is going to trigger you to have an attack of some kind, please go watch something else. Thank you. This video is made for the purposes of criticism and analysis and review, and it's not made to hurt anyone's feelings. If you feel this video will cause you to have an adverse reaction you feel unable to handle at this time, I invite you to please and insist that you go somewhere else. I will be using panels from the Webtoon I'm going to be critically talking about, but I have transferred them into a video essay format, so they are protected under fair use because this is for criticism and review, which is protected under fair use law. So thank you. We're going to go ahead and begin now. Before we start on this video essay, I did want to, one last disclaimer, put out a spoiler warning for some plot points and backstories for characters in the Webtoon freaking romance, but after this essay, I hope you know you shouldn't be supporting a work with these kind of messages in it anyway, so spoilers ahead if you care in any way. I will be sure to always try to do a spoiler warning if I'm going to include any in any videos I make, which sometimes I forget, but I always try my best because once I was watching a Beastar video before I was up to date with the comic, and I saw some stuff, and I basically was like, holy crap, because I don't spoil stuff, so you know, I'm one of the good people, okay? I'm just kidding, but no spoilers here. Well, there will be spoilers. I just put a spoiler warning in, so you know, you're not stupid. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Hares, rabbits, toadmen, horse-headed spirits. Today, let's become religious zealots while we are reading a webtoon clearly not made for us. Today's victim is going to be Freaking Romance, which is drawn and written by Snailords and published on Webtoon. Freaking Romance is a webtoon webcomic published first in October 2018 and is ongoing to today. It stars an 18-year-old girl named Zillith who moves into a spooky apartment after being kicked out by her parents, only to discover that the apartment is haunted, in quotation marks, by a handsome K-pop-looking unnaturally pretty ghost boy man. Zealand is 24, I believe. He's the ghost in the house, ghost in quotation marks. And Zillith doesn't think that he can see her. So basically that's a very, very broad beginning view of the story, and overall I think the webtoon actually has a good story, pretty well written characters, and some very nice art, but also some immoral messages, and by some immoral messages I mean it has immoral messages from start to finish. Now you're probably wondering, with a quick Google search and a quick looking at the drawing style, why I, the most prudish prude to ever exist, clicked on a story with the word sexy in the thumbnail. I will say, arrest me, please. No, well, you know I'm a K-pop fan, regrettably. I'm just kidding. Oh my gosh, anyway, go ahead and stream Super M's mediocre album because it's not about the music anyway. I'm just kidding, that's a joke. I love Super M, and I am dropping all my money into their wallets. Anyway, so getting back to where I was. Oh yes, I was talking about Freaking Romance. So basically I read this comic because I was bored and Zealand looked cute, and I was aware from my little sister who's a teenager that there's no graphic content on webtoons, no pornographic content though. There's some pretty like saucy stuff in here, so webtoon, this is pushing it. I'm calling the cops. Anyway, am I ever gonna get to the meat of this video essay? No, I'm not. No, I am. So, basically, I wanted to say that I actually like Freaking Romance's concept, the story, and, I did like the characters, and the art is very beautiful. I'm not going to say that it's not beautiful, but I had to step in, okay? I had to come in and cancel it. I'm just kidding, but, like, I was enjoying it, and then I was like, oh, shit, like, this is not okay. See, because there are some truly evil and harmful and immoral messages that are in this, and this is like specifically really bad for young readers to take in. So basically in this video essay, I'm going to be breaking down the main negative messages that I believe freaking romance either intentionally or unintentionally sends to an audience. I won't be making the claim that Snailords, the author, believes any of the claims I'm putting forward, as I don't like to speculate on someone's personal beliefs. Basically, I mean, like, obviously it doesn't matter what they believe about what I think, but basically I'm not saying the author intended to send these harmful messages. It could have been like an accident that these messages were sent, but I don't really think that's likely, to be entirely honest, but I'm not going to say that because I don't know for sure. Also, it's the good time to get that like really dumb disclaimer out of the way that all YouTubers who make a living discussing other people's work have to basically do, and basically that's just, I don't want anyone to send any hate to Snailords, who's like the author and creator of this comic, or anyone who worked on this series, or any of the fans of it. I'm criticizing the messages of this comic, and I am criticizing the art, which I have a right to do, and you have the right to listen to my critique or not, and agree or not, or enjoy the comic or not. Basically, we can all express our opinions that we feel strongly about the messages of the piece, or otherwise, without like taking a bite of the other person who is on the opposite side or helped make this piece, even if we don't like it. Maybe that person will hear our respectful criticism and think about our points and maybe reevaluate some of their messages their work like gives off, and maybe they'll change that in the future and like not put out such harmful stuff. Or maybe they'll disagree with us, but now they'll have a new perspective from a different point of view, and both are fine. Well, the second one is like they're still promoting bad messages to youth, but there isn't much we can do about that in a free country other than like pray for them and all those who are spreading those harmful ideas. So that also, before I kind of get into the meat of the matter, goes for the other side as well. If you disagree with anything in this video, that's your right, and you have the freedom to express your opinion, but please be respectful. We're all human beings with great worth endowed by our Creator, and we should treat each other with mercy as Jesus treats us. I guess if you disagree, you probably don't believe in Jesus, so I recommend The Case for Christ, which is a book basically like proving Jesus' existence from a more scientific point of view. I'll link it in the description below. It's a good book. I recommend it. But the point is, let's just all respect each other because we all have worth, and we can be kind even if we disagree on our opinions. So also for the record, I kind of like freaking romance, even though it's very, very problematic. Like, I love stealing the left's lingo. It's just like, just get ready for my religion is not your costume video. Like, they can't handle the monster they created. But anyway, seriously, that's coming, especially in K-pop. But anyway, we're moving on from that. So basically, I've already made a video essay of complaining about She-Ra, the Princess in Power, and gosh, I can't even talk about the show without it leaving a bad taste in my mouth now. And basically, actually, I just thought it up again, and I actually think I hate this series. Like, I actually think I hate it. Like, I am reading my original script, which I wrote like weeks ago, and I just got around to recording it now because like I have K-pop album reviews to record, like instead of actually important stuff that could like change people's minds, and like and basically I realized I hate this story. Like, it actually gives me icky vibes. Like, I feel like there's like the devil in this. I mean, I'm not going that far, but like, oh my gosh, this whole thing is like an entitled brats. Like, I'm not saying Snailords is an entitled brats, but like every single character in this is like an entitled garbage human, like an actual garbage. Like, the characters are garbage people. They're like actually that green thing that comes out of the trash can in Sesame Street. Like, literally not a single one of them has like one redeeming quality. Like, they're all trash. And like, this comic like isn't that good. So I was gonna like have this whole segment where I was like, you know, like commentators who talk about media and like pick it apart, like they secretly like the media, but then I'm like, no, some things are just so awful, you have to like inflict them upon the world because you're like, I had to suffer, so y'all have to suffer. And also for me, it's not even about making y'all suffer. It's more like, bitch, why is no one talking about how awful this is? And I'm not saying that to drag Snailords or anyone involved. It's really hard to make a comic good anything good, write a book that's good. I know it's really difficult. I'm not saying that they didn't try hard. They absolutely did, I'm sure. The art is actually really admirable, but man, the characters just are horrible people. But that's just my opinion. But like, oh my gosh, what? Okay, anyway, I have just had like 3 pages of a tangent, so we're gonna actually get into it now. Without further ado, frickin' romance's immoral and problematic messages ruining things that I actually hate. So it's already ruined, but hooray, let's go ahead and get started. The first negative message from a break in space-time from an alternate universe is using your best friend for her body is lit. Oh, no, it is not. So this is kind of quick, so I'm just going to get it out of the way first. Basically, Zealous wants to commit immoral acts to Veros. So I'm not actually going to focus on this being a same-sex relationship. I am actually going to focus on the fact that it's Zillith's desire to have a sexual relationship with Veros. This is mostly problematic because she clearly states later in the comic that she has no romantic feelings for her friend Veros. She just likes her as a friend and is sexually attracted to her, but she doesn't feel any deeper connection than that. And I'm quoting, basically, Zilla says that she'd be down to do something with her, but she doesn't actually want to be in a relationship. So, Zillith wants to use her friend's body for pleasure and then discard her friend, like her friend is a piece of wet cardboard. Okay, you're a terrible person, Zillith. Now, this might be an uphill battle for me to explain why this is so problematic to someone who has an entirely opposite belief system of mine, but I believe that casual sex is, like, not good and it's immoral. I'm religious, and I'm a Catholic, to be specific. The Bible says so, and if you haven't gotten the drift yet, I kind of take what God says seriously. Not that I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm perfect or sinless, because like I totally sin all the time and make mistakes like anyone else. We're all kind of rotten grapes ruining God's perfectly made vineyard He created for us. But oh God, credit to my local associate pastor for the grape metaphor. He actually said stinky grapes, but I was like, no, I am saying that, and I just like said it. So oh well. Anyway, also, do they call Catholic priests pastors? I guess they do. It's like a rank. It's just like they're priests. What? Okay, anyway. Also because I am obsessed with not hurting anyone's feelings, I'm not saying that you're a rotten grape to God. You're His priceless child and He loves you. It's like a reference to a Bible passage, but that's not what this is about. Otherwise, this video would be of infinitely more value, but it's not. So, back to Zillith wanting to commit sins against God and her friend. Well, you can't commit sins against another. I guess you can. I don't know. Where's the Catholic priest? I need to talk to him. Anyway, so basically this is a negative message because the comic never criticizes or condemns Zillith's desire to do this, to literally just like have a sexual relationship with her friend, but never actually give her friend like a relationship, literally just like use her body for sex. This is literally presented in the comic as like a matter-of-fact thing, and maybe even like relatable. Like, oh my gosh, don't you just want to like use your friends for like their bodies and like not like give them anything worthwhile? Like, bitch, no. Like, no one wants to do that except you freak. Like, anyway, it's just like presented as this chill thing in the comic, and Zillith, a character who like supposedly, but like clearly actually doesn't. Like, she's supposed to care for her best friend Veros in the comic, but like she just like is fully willing, or at least desires and fantasizes about like using her supposed best friend's body for nothing but pleasure and then leaving, like no strings attached. Like what the hell is she gonna say after they like have sex? Like, we can still be friends, right? Like what? That's evil. Basically, like, once again, if you know nothing about like Christianity, you won't get this, but basically we believe that like sex is like a special and intimate act that's only supposed to take place between a man and a woman in marriage. And like, I'm a Catholic, so I also believe that it's also for the purpose of like creating children, or you at least have to be open to the idea, which a lot of other Christian churches believe that as well, or not that part, but like the like only within marriage thing and stuff like that. So basically, like, to us, like, sex is like very like intimate and important, and it's like not to be done carelessly or shallowly. Like, it's like one of the most intimate things you can do with another human being, and it should be done like selflessly and with love for each other and God, like with the Lord's blessing, basically. Basically, I'm having a hard time explaining it, so I stole it from the Catholic Wiki about like sexuality. I'm crediting it, so it's not actually stealing. But basically, they explain it like this: the Church teaches that sexual intercourse has a twofold unitive and procreative purpose, and that outside marriage, sex is always contrary to its purpose. According to the Catechism of the Catholic Church, conjugal love aims at a deeply personal unity, a unity that, beyond union in one flesh, leads to forming one heart and soul, since the marriage bond is a sign of the love between God and humanity. Thanks, Vicky. That was like, I'm articulating, like, it was articulating what I was struggling to say. Basically, it's like one heart, one soul. It's like really sacred. It's like a sacrament before you in the church. I don't think it's like an official sacrament, but you know what I'm saying. Also, like, you clicked into a video about African romance and you got a class on like the Catholic views of sex. So like, sorry, not sorry. Thank me, actually. I'm just kidding. And basically, you could be like, oh, well, like, that's just your opinion. Like, yeah, but you clicked on this video, so, like, that's what you got, like, my opinion. Like, what did you want? And that's also, like, the Catholic opinion and the opinion of most Christians. Like, you shouldn't just be having, like, really shallow sex like this. And, like, Zillith doesn't even, like, want a relationship. Like, they're not even married. Like, and she doesn't even want to date her, like, at all. She just, like, wants to, like, use her. Like, the comic never comments on the fact that, like, how messed up Zillith's desire actually is. Like, she wants to use her friend's body. Like, it's no more valuable than, like, a cheap video game controller. And Zillith just wants to, like, play with it and then toss it off to the side when she's done with it. And that's, like, dark. That is, like, dark evil in Zillith. Like, Burroughs is, like, a fictional person. But, like, if this was real, like, she would be, like, a child of God with infinite worth and dignity. And Zillith, like, effectively treats her body and self with, like, as much value as a 5-year-old rich kid, like, treats, like, one too many of her $100 toys, which, like, this is, like, even reinforced later when Zilla says that she's not going to go to France with V-Rose. Basically, like, V-Rose is like, come to Europe with me and we can date. And Zillith is, like, not actually willing to be committed to V-Rose in a relationship. Although that would be a sin too, but okay. But once again, like, Zillith pretty much straight up says she doesn't feel romantically, like, she doesn't want to be romantically with Barros. So, like, she just wants to sleep with her. And, like, that's, like, pretty dang evil and selfish. And the comic, like, doesn't have, like, any problems with this. Like, it never calls Zillith out for this. And, like, that's just, like, a horrible message to send to your audience. Like, especially your young female audience, which, like, will undoubtedly see themselves and, like, relate and admire, like, the 18-year-old Zillith who's, like, incredibly pretty, talented, funny, and, like, lives on her own with a hot ghost guy, like, living in her house. Also, you might be like, what do you mean, like, a younger audience? Like, this is clearly geared towards older people. First of all, have you read the storyline? No, it isn't. It's, like, literally, like, written, it's, like, by a 15-year-old. I'm just kidding, but, like, it ain't that deep, okay? And, like, it's literally, like, the story is, like, literally what teens make up in their brain, so, like, we're not that advanced. But anyway, but I will go ahead and, like, destroy that argument with, like, facts and evidence and logic, okay? So, basically, I found an article here, which I'll go ahead and, like, link it or, like, put the little, like, URL up at top. And basically, it's, like, exactly what I freaking thought. Basically, it's, like, the statistics of the Webtoon, like, comic platform. And basically, the audience is 60 to 65% female, while only 30 to 35% male. So, females make up a way bigger part of the site. And also, 16-year-olds to 24-year-old girls are the largest age group, like, reading this, and 16 is still pretty young. And I know from, like, anecdotal stuff, which, yes, isn't as, like, statistical, that, like, girls way younger than 16 are reading this. Like, my little sister reads Webtoons, and, like, her friends read Webtoons, and they're all, like, below the age of 16, which, for better or for worse, that's just the reality of what's going on the platform. And, you know, 16 is quite young. So, you're wrong. Most of the audience is teen to young girls, and, there's no age block on Frickin' Romance or any of the Webtoons, I believe. That might be wrong because I'm not an expert. Like, I don't spend all my time reading Webtoons. In fact, like, I've only read, like 2 Webtoons or something like that. Oh my gosh, give me an award. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But there's, like, no, when I went to read it, like, there's no waiver or, like, age identification. So basically this site is, like, not protecting minors at all. They're not even showing, like, the tiniest bit of effort. They don't even care that children might be, like, traumatized or negatively influenced for this site. So, like, you're like, oh, it's for, like, 16-year-olds. Okay, well, 16-year-olds might not be traumatized by this work. They're just like getting all these terrible messages, but like literally there's no age verification. So like what's to stop like a 10-year-old girl from reading freaking romance? Like I already said, like it's highly inappropriate in its art sometimes. Like literally sometimes on like borderline, this should not really be acceptable on webtoons. It's like very racy. And then second of all, like there's literally scenes where like Zilith is just like, oh yeah, I want to like have sex with you, like V-Rose, and like not have a relationship, like just use you for your body. I'm like how are they keeping like 10-year-olds from like reading this? Like I don't understand. So maybe webtoons should like go to jail or something. I don't know, but like they should probably like work harder to actually like protect children. Also like maybe have like comics rated certain things, because I like looked and like I'm pretty sure there's no rating system on webtoons. Like hold on, I'm like looking right now, and like when, like I said, when I clicked into it, there was no like mature warning or like stuff like that. So basically I have a lot of issues with that. And where was I? Oh yeah, I was destroying all of you with my facts and evidence. I'm just kidding. But basically, to get back to like this problematic section, basically Zillis, she's like a fucking awful person. She just wants to like disrespect her friend sexually while like not committing to a relationship with her. And like she's literally like treating V-Rose like you would treat like a disposable grocery bag. And the comic like never points this out or criticizes this, like unless I missed it, which in case like point it out to me, let's have a discussion. But like basically like Zillah's like an actually like trash human. Like she's like actually garbage because she just wants to use her friend for her body, and like canceled. Anyway, thank you. We're going moving on to the next terrible message. Let's go, turtleheads. Okay. So the second negative message from a break in space-time from an alternate universe is parents are evil. Freaking evil. Okay? You get it? Freaking evil? Because it's like freaking, oh my gosh, I just stabbed myself in the eye. Anyway, so basically parents, this is like a hot take. Okay, this is like a radical idea. This is like so controversial, but like this is my opinion. I think that parents should be respected and admired. Oh my gosh, cancel. Oh my gosh, she did not unclimb the police. Oh my gosh. Okay, so like I'm gonna explain. So like in freaking romance, like this one, I'm like, I don't know about this really. Maybe this is just like really, really bad writing. But like I kind of wonder like what is going on with the parents in this story, because every single parent character in freaking romance, like with maybe the exception of Zillis's mom, they're depicted as like straight up abusive and evil, like literally evil, which is like ironic because like all the main cast are evil too, but like it's never said, but like literally the parents are like straight up evil. And like not like the comic like knows they're evil because it like doesn't know its main cast has like serious moral problems, but whatever. So basically like if my brain didn't create this like in a medicine-induced fever dream, like I think Zealand's mom is so unrealistically diabolical that she kills his dog when he's a kid, like maybe even in front of him. Honestly, I don't really remember that shit. I'm gonna be real. I'll like put in some pictures. I don't know if she kills it in front of him or not, but the point is the dog dies, or maybe she just gets rid of it as a pound. Listen, I forgot, and I don't care that much. The point is like she hurting the dog. Okay. So she's like some Dio levels of wickedness. Okay. Oh my gosh, what just happened? Anyway, so. Also, by the way, like, rip Danny, that poor dog, ripperoni. So, like, my point is, like, all the guardians and, like, parents are evil. So, for example, like, in Veros, like, the one lesbian friend, she has, like, guardians, like, because it's never said what happened to her parents, but I don't know, she's, like, raised by relatives, and there's, like, physical abuse there. And then, like, Zillis's dad, it's, like, kind of unclear, but I guess he's, like, emotionally and, like, mentally abusive, because, like, he, like, is portrayed as like he starts fights, but then he like apologizes and he tries to use like emotional manipulation to get what he wants. But like honestly for him, I wish they showed more of the actual abuse, because like I feel like I never got the full context of like why he was so abusive. I mean, I don't doubt like he was abusive because he does some like messed up stuff in the comic, but like also we know like it's like vague, and honestly like it's clearly biased from like Zillis's point of view, who's like Zillah is like his rebellious daughter, and also she's very morally questionable. So like I don't really take her opinion that seriously. So like I wish we were shown more of his like actually abusive action, because like definitely like we see some problematic behavior, but like I feel like I couldn't really understand Zillis's like distress because she was like freaking out and stuff, and I was like, what the hell? Like like, maybe it's because I'm a pretty empathetic person, but I just like didn't understand why she was so traumatized. Like, this guy just seemed like kind of fucked up, but like honestly she was like ready to like cry and like hyperventilate, and I was like, okay, but like why? Like, yeah, he's like fucked up, but like, is he that abusive? Like, I'm not saying he's not abusive, I just like don't feel like it was conveyed very well. Like, I don't feel like I really got it, so maybe that's my own fault. It probably is, but like I didn't really get it. Like, for example, like, and I like get it. Like for example, this is like really random, but like, so I can relate to things like I didn't go through, like in Naruto, bringing it back to like the weebs in the 2000s. Like, basically, like I felt really bad for Sasuke. Like, when his whole family got slaughtered by his brother, like, man, that's all ripperoonie, you know what I'm saying? But like, I've never had my whole family killed, but like, I totally got it. I got why Sasuke wanted revenge. I got why Sasuke was traumatized. I got why Sasuke had the serious, deep psychological wounds. And like, oh my gosh, like, you know what I'm saying? I also related to Naruto. Like, he like grew up as an orphan and he was like rejected by the community. And I like felt that deep and I like completely understood it. And like, but I've never been like, I'm not an orphan, and like I wasn't like outcast from my community growing up. So like, maybe this was just like a misstep in the writing that like, which is understandable because like writing is really difficult. I'm not judging that. The point is like, I'm not saying that Zealous's dad isn't abusive. I'm just saying I don't feel like the abuse was conveyed as well as it could have been. But anyway, back to this section. So basically, I'm not saying that abusive parents don't exist. They absolutely do. And when it happens, it's a horrible and immoral thing. No kid deserves to be abused or neglected ever in any circumstances. Just like no kid deserves to be aborted. So, Cry Me a River, leftists. By the way, I recommend 2 videos. Ben Shapiro Destroys the Abortion Argument, and then Hands Off Their Bodies, The Case Against Abortion, also by Ben Shapiro, live at the University of Alabama. One is like longer and one is like shorter. And if you don't understand why people are against abortion, I think these videos are really good if you're like at all interested in like possibly hearing the other point of view, if you're like pro-choice, which is like really just like pro killing babies. But like, it's okay if you don't know that yet, because we all were ignorant at one point. So the second video is a lot longer and more in depth, but the first one's more like a quick statement of facts, but both are really good. And you don't have to agree with everything that Ben Shapiro says, but his arguments for like abortion get like straight to the point. And honestly, if you're like pro-life, you should really consider that like whenever you vote in an election, because that's like the most important issue, to be honest. And like, if your mom aborted you, you wouldn't be alive right now. So please think about like the unborn lives that could be like your best friend, your lover, your sibling, or someone else in your life that could have been in danger of being aborted, and there are babies right now that are being aborted. And I think that's really important to keep in mind when we vote. And we need to work to like respect life for what it is, which is from conception until natural death. Anyway, getting away from another tragic topic that, is like, parents killing their own children, we're going on to another real life evil, which is parental abuse, which is real and evil and scary, and it deserves to be condemned totally. And the parents, like the children with the abusive parents, they should be safely removed from the homes of this abuse into ideally a loving 2-parent home with a mom and dad that will give them the love and safety they deserve. That being said, like, leftists in general have this really strong like anti-parent, anti-authority, anti-tradition stance that's like honestly so toxic and like destructive to like what were once happy families. It basically teaches kids and teens more specifically that everything their parent does that like upsets them is like parental abuse. And this like really quickly creates like a toxic and like degrading quality to the relationship, which can like permanently destroy families. Basically, I'm saying like there's a difference between like emotional abuse, which are like repeated put downs and insults, and your dad saying a mean thing one time. There's a difference between your dad taking away all of your personal possessions, which you need to be cared for and safe, which is abuse, and him taking away your cell phone and laptop because you disobeyed him. There's a difference between your mom like threatening your life because of a decision you made, which is abuse, and her just disapproving of a choice that you made. There is a difference between your mom like isolating your room for extended periods of time with no social interaction to like hurt your mental health, like that's abuse. And that's different from her just like banning you from seeing a friend you were caught doing something she like didn't like or she didn't approve of. So basically, like, I point out these examples because like one is very clearly abuse and one is not, but like literally leftists think they're the same. Like they literally think anytime the parent does something they don't like, it's like abuse. Anything that like makes the child feel like bad or like they did something wrong is like abuse. And basically it just emphasizes the like very, very few abusive parents versus like the amazing many, many loving ones, and basically just teaches teens to be like, oh, your parents did something that like you didn't like, oh, they're abusive, like you're right, even like usually you're wrong. You know what I'm saying? It's like a similar way that they like demonize the entire American police force for like a few incidences of like unfortunate like police brutality or tragedy, which are sad and deserve to be condemned, but like they totally ignore the millions of really good interactions that happen with police men and women every day. Like literally millions of interactions where like nothing bad happens and like it's a positive experience for like both the police and the person. Or like I'm not saying it was like super positive, like oh my gosh, I got a speeding ticket, but like it's completely civil and nice and like no one is like abused, and like they just totally ignore that. And it's like a similar thing. Like bad things do happen, abuse does happen by parents, but like most of the time it doesn't. So, and in pointing this out, like I've already mentioned this, so you have to like be purposefully like twisting my words, but like it's not, when I'm saying this, it's not to ignore like instances of parental abuse, like or police wrongdoing when they occur. It's rather to just express that like just exclusively focusing on like the very small minority of these horrible incidents when like the larger thing is like really good overall, it can be like incredibly like misleading and damaging. So this is kind of bringing in antidotes, so it's like not like antidotes. That's not what I mean. Anecdotal, I think is what I mean. Like it's like the word that's like anecdotal, but like anecdotes, is it right? I think I got it. I think it's anecdotes. I think I said like antibodies. I don't remember. It's like 3 a.m. But anyway, basically like in my personal life, this is like not facts and logic. This is just like literally like a personal thing. But like I've literally seen this like anti-parent like rhetoric from like the left and in stories like freaking romance and other media pieces like it. Like I've seen them actually destroy families. Like I've literally seen teens who like take in media and like their parents aren't abusive. Sometimes their parents are just like a little strict, and this media literally twists their brains and they literally convince themselves they're being abused, and then they literally like the house becomes so toxic and it literally scars the families to the point of like people cutting off ties and like literally like destroying families. Like I've literally seen that shit like on multiple occasions. And it's like literally I know those parents. Like, well, you never know exactly what goes on in a home, but like I'm guessing all the times that happened that most of the time they weren't actually being abused. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you got to be realistic here. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because like there was a point where I was like, never mind, what are we doing here? Anyway, the point is like I saw shit like that go down, and like I look back and I'm like, holy shit, like they just took in all this media and they thought they were being abused, but they weren't. And I'm not saying they weren't being abused, but like pretty sure not all of them were being abused. Wow, I'm gonna get canceled. Oh well, I'm already canceling you, so you're retroactively canceled. And no, I'm not saying like if you like, I'm saying facts and logic, you know what I'm saying? So where were we? So once again, I'm not going to say like Snailords wanted to promote this message, but like to me is a little suspect that like every single parent or guardian character in frickin' romance is like an absolutely wicked person. But like once again, I'm not saying the author like wanted to spread a message that parents are terrible, but like regardless or not of the intent, like that's the result. Like, and literally it like blows my mind because this like seems so purposeful, because which I'm not saying it is, but like it seems that way because like it could have easily been avoided by just including just one parent character that was like a good parent, or even like a mediocre one, but there's like literally not a single good parent. You could bring up Zilla's mom here and basically be like, oh, she's like portrayed less negatively than the other parents, which I do agree to. Like I agree with that. But I'm going to talk more about her actually in the last section of like problematic stuff that I have talked about in this comic, because like you do have to admit that the coverage she receives is still very critical, and like the comic really like any positive light she's portrayed in is like extremely conditional. Like if you don't know about her already and you like don't actually want to read this like crappy comic, to be quite honest, don't worry about it. I'll get into that section later. I just wanted to let you know that like that is not a good objection to this part. So just know that I'm not accepting that as an argument. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just not, so you can cry about it, I guess. But I am going to talk about her in our later section, so we're just going to kind of discard her here. And it's not like she's really portrayed well, so it doesn't really, like, disprove it. Anyway. So basically, once again, whether intended or not, the fact that every single parent depicted on screen is abusive gives off the message that parents are like abusive and evil in general, and basically they're to be resisted and rebelled from, like, and cut off at like all opportunities. Basically, they're the villains in the story. You might be like, oh, you're being too harsh, DC. And I'll be like, no. Like, no one would let this slide. Like, well, of course, like, if this media was, like, unfairly depicting Christians, police, Republicans, religious people, conservative Southerners, like, well, then people would let it slide. But, like, literally, if it was, like, a different group of people, like, no one would let it slide. So, like, let me give an example of, like, how everyone would be, like, up in outrage if this was, like, not parents, but it was, like, some other group. So let's like go into fictional land. So like let's say author A writes a fictional story about a Mexican girl named Anna, and she meets 3 African American characters in the story. And each of these African American characters are portrayed and written as criminals. And we see no counterbalance to this depiction of this race of individuals, like an African American character who's a good person or like an ally to the protagonist. So most leftists would certainly have questions for author A about like why they decided to make all 3 of their criminal characters African American. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that author A is a racist or anything like that, but it does mean that the work they wrote, whether intentionally or not, is giving the impression to the audience, especially if aimed at a younger, more impressionable, and less discerning audience, that all African American individuals are criminals, which is obviously a demonstrably false, racist, and evil lie. Meanwhile, if this isn't always the case, for example, like if author B wrote a story about a Mexican girl named Anna and she met a single African American character who happened to be a criminal, I don't think it would be fair to draw the same inference as there's no pattern, right? And then in a different situation, like if author C, a different author, wrote another version of the same story in which Anna meets multiple African American criminals, but then she's assisted or saved by a team of African American policemen or otherwise do-gooders. Once again, then no one would have any questions for this because it's not creating a pattern of a certain type of character, whether it's a race, an ethnicity, a religion, an occupation, or a role being like described that way. They're not always being portrayed in the one repeatedly negative and unfavorable way. Also, just to clarify, in the example A, I'm not saying that author A 100% for sure is racist, because just because you like write something a little unfortunate, unless we have proof otherwise, it doesn't like mean that they meant to do that. We can always give people the benefit of the doubt if we don't have concrete proof. So it could be just that the first description of the chosen group could have been like an unfortunate coincidence, and like the author hadn't thought through the fact that like all the criminals were African American characters. And then maybe in this entirely fictional scenario, maybe after having this like politely brought to her attention, maybe author A could like find that there's a pattern and that like, oh, maybe I should like make sure that in this like really heated and like politically polarized climate, I can like, like change it so that this doesn't happen. And it is possible that people find patterns where they don't actually exist. And sometimes that does happen, and we should be aware of that and be informed and critical and intelligent intakers of media. But it can be something to consider. Like, if a certain race, ethnicity, religion, occupation, role is being displayed one way over and over and over again, negatively on the screen over and over again, it's always a good idea to look at the nuance of what we might be missing. So while I make no claims as to what was intended, it's undeniable that every single parent or guardian character in Frickin' Romance is abusive or neglectful, and this in turn paints all parents in a negative light. So the author of Frickin' Romance could have easily avoided this as well. When I brought this up to someone I know, she reminded me that maybe the author wanted the 2 main love interests, Zealand and Zillith, to have like a similar trauma to bond over to deepen their relationship in the story. And this would be entirely valid, having 2 romantic leads bond over something that was like difficult in their past that they like have in common. It is like a great and pretty common way to help develop a deeper and more complex like bond and love between them. And if the author actually wanted to do this to help develop like the 2 main leads, Zillith and Zealand's bond, because like it is admittedly shallow. Sorry, I had to come for her. I'm just kidding. Like what? Anyway, actually I think Snailords is a guy. I'm not coming for him. I have nothing to do with him. I'm only talking about the story. No hate to him, of course. So basically that would be totally fine, but the problem is not just their parents. It's every single parent character or guardian. Like literally this problem could have been avoided by simply having Viros have loving parents, or like at least one loving parent. But like, no, this is a conscious choice by the author to give every single parent character, like to make them all abusive, to give every main character in her story abusive parents. And like, I don't know if this is because the author thinks like abused characters are like cool and hot. And like my mocking is only slight because like, what? Anyway, because that's like a very 13-year-old opinion. Like, oh my gosh, she was abused. That's like so hot and desirable. Like, okay, no, like that's not what? Ew. But anyway, so like, so basically my point is like, after all this ranting, is that most parents are good and loving and that you should respect your gosh darn parents. And like, I believe that that's like the implied message of like the depiction of every single parent in freaking romance. Like, it's just such a terrible message to like an impressionable teen girl audience. It like teaches them that like all their parents are like horrible and like abusive and shit. Like, that's just not the reality. And I'm not saying that Snailords is saying all parents are like that, but it is kind of an alarming trend that I don't think he noticed, and I kind of wonder why it's there. And once again, it could have been so easily fixed by giving somebody a supportive parent, and I don't know, it's just kind of red flags all around, and like I wouldn't want any, like, my little sister reading this, or like literally any young person reading this, because just triggering, okay? So we canceled it. Bye-bye. Third, a negative message from a break in space-time from an alternate universe. Get with the weird ghost in your house. Just kidding. This message is have sexual intercourse with whoever you want, whenever you want, even in a bathroom with a gosh darn stranger. Zealand, you slut. By the way, I would never call no, I'm just kidding. Zealand's a fictional character, so I feel very comfortable publicly slut shaming him. It's not like I'm gonna have him crying into his pillow tonight because of what I said. He's fictional, so you can stop now. Anyway, so this third negative message that I personally don't agree with, and I do think is just objectively wrong in freaking romance, is the general vibe of sexual liberation from it. I hate to even use that term that way, but it's probably a good descriptor. See, ever since like the 60s in America, I'm not too familiar with other parts of the world and their history of like sexual morality and sexual norms in society changing over time. Although in Germany, you can buy sex toys in the public bathrooms, and I was like so disgusted. Like, what the heck, Germany? Why? Like, at least hide that stuff in the back room of like a sex shop or something. Like, literally, kids were in that bathroom. It was so freaking weird and disturbing. But anyway, that's the Germans' business, I guess. But like, what on earth? Anyway. Basically, in freaking romance, there's an implication that having sex with whoever you want, whenever you want, as long as you have consent, is totally chill and maybe even encouraged. So Exhibit A of this would be in my first negative message that I brought up earlier in this video essay about Zillis basically being down to bang B-Rose, like, even if there were no strings attached. Exhibit B is when Zealand, who, I'm not surprised he's sinning like this, like, the man is literally a walking wreck. He, like, consensually takes a woman into the woman's restroom, and they're total strangers, and they plan to have sexual intercourse right there, like, in a bathroom stall. Like, oh my gosh, he's a hoe. Lucky for my virgin eyes, Zilith comes into the bathroom and distracts Zealand, who then leaves to comfort her, so he doesn't actually end up having the one-night stand in a literally public restroom with a stranger. But, basically, when Zealand comes out of the bathroom, Zilith is, like, shocked because she basically sees him, like, you know, shirtless and, like, with lipstick on it. But then instead of being, like, horrified, she literally encourages him, and, like, she's like, oh, you should go get some. And I'm like, what on earth? And, like, now this is very keeping in with Zilith's character, as I've already established she's, like, a really bad person. And I'm not saying that, like, the right response would have been Zilith to, like, try to, like, shame or humiliate Zealand after catching him, like, acting like an actual gigolo in a women's restroom of all places. But Zilith certainly doesn't hint or express any, like, disapproval at this, and neither does the author. I don't have a problem with characters being written as horrible people. I sometimes write stories with horrible people in them. That's, like, sometimes a necessary part of storytelling. But I do find it suspicious, and even kind of angering that the text does not condemn them for their actions, either one of them. Zealand for just trying to literally be a hoe in a restroom stall with a stranger, and Zilith for being like, that's chill. Like, she's like, you do it. Like, she loves it. And, like, the text, it doesn't disagree with them. So, for example, like, this is, like, basically, I'm not saying you can't have characters do, like, immoral things in a story. Absolutely not. For example, in a story I wrote, basically, there's a relationship between an older woman in her early 20s with a older teenage boy, and it's obviously inappropriate and evil. So it's obviously evil and predatory, but the older character is never portrayed as virtuous or heroic, and the other characters in the story who hold more moral authority than her basically condemn the relationship for its obvious predatory nature. So basically, even though like a bad thing is happening in the story that I wrote, the text doesn't approve of it and say that it's good. It basically says, oh no, this is fucked up. And my point is, like, if you want to write things that are terrible, that's fine. But then as the author, it is your moral responsibility to condemn those things within the text. So here's another example. Like, you write a murderer, like in a story. So you write a story about like a murderer, and that's fine. But it starts to raise eyebrows and concern about the messages in your text if in the story, the murderer is the hero of the story. And this murderer is never criticized, punished, or at the very least called out for his actions. And the very author themselves doesn't give them any negative treatment within the text, and it never comments on the fact that their character, who's an actual murderer that they wrote, is evil. Does that make sense? Basically, I believe you can, and it can be very fun to write about bad people or even mostly good people with serious moral failings. That like is a lot of great drama. And let's be real, a story with 20 characters who are angels, who all love and support each other at all times and never do anything wrong, hasn't won any Oscars recently, okay? Not that Oscars matter anyway. But here in my script, I have a rant about the Oscars and their new weird like guidelines, but like honestly, I don't care enough to read these out. You all know they're stupid. I know they're stupid, so we're just gonna go on. Although I did like Parasite, that Korean film. Oh, this is a rant. Although like it was violent, but I kind of liked it. Although that sex scene was really unnecessary. That was so awkward. That was like literally so awkward. I was like watching it with my family and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so awkward. It was a pretty good movie though. Anyway, I'm ranting. Anyway, but like back to my point about writing characters with like serious moral failings. Basically, I think it's fine, but these moral failings should be pointed out and portrayed as negative within the text. That's like the responsible thing to do. So freaking romance is not responsible in the way it conveys its text. So basically, freaking romance conveys sex as something transactional at best. If there's consent between two people, or possibly more than that, although it never goes there, thank goodness. Basically, the text is like, go be as nasty as you want. So even Zealand and Zillith's relationship, which is given the most time to develop beyond the physical in the comic, is still mostly physical in the end. For like one of the first things Zealand wants to do when he finds out that Zillith likes him back is like he's so overcome with carnal desire that he almost like has sexual intercourse with her in a time-sensitive monster-infested wasteland of another dimension that every second he spends lusting over Zillith's body, the time to go back to their home worlds and out of the dimension full of horrific siren-like monsters is running out. That scene was so dumb to me. Also, if you like haven't read the comic, wow, that just made no sense, but and honestly, I don't care like explaining it. It's not that interesting. Basically, he goes to like this horror dimension to save her because he needs to save her because this story's crack. And like literally, as they're supposed to be escaping, he like, damn, she hot. And I'm like, literally, like you. I hope you both get eaten by the sirens. But anyway, so this negative message, like I will admit, maybe is one of the weakest ones I'm pointing out, since like admittedly, the author like never has Zealand look Zillith in the eye and give her a speech about how sex with consent is amazing and about how you should have sexual intercourse with whoever you want, wherever you want, at any time that you want. So basically I am like implying quite a bit, but I think it's easily implied. Like I think anybody like with a moral code similar to mine would easily imply this way, because the author never condemns any of the characters literally being complete horn dogs. And it never talks about how this makes them shallow, vapid, and in the end just like straight up bad people. So everybody has sinful desires, of course, but acting on them without any restraint or thought or care for other people is immoral. To illustrate my point, when Zillith, all the way back, actually, she kind of does this all the time, but like towards the beginning of the story more. So when Zillith is sinfully like fantasizing about doing like illicit and unnatural acts with Viros, she doesn't spend a single moment of her fantasy thinking about how her friend would feel about what she's thinking about. Like literally, she doesn't think about how it might damage her friend, the negative effects to Viros that she could cause to her. And Zealand, like when he's attempting to hook up with the woman at the party in the bathroom, Zealand does not spare a single thought about who this woman is, what her worth is, like to Zealand, who is, you know, a protagonist and I assume is supposed to be seen positively in the story, like it's never commented on how he literally is strictly using this woman for his own pleasure. And he doesn't care about what struggles she may have gone through, and he doesn't care about how dirty or disgusting this is, or how this act might make her feel afterwards, or what effects it might have on this woman. He, it's fully implied, is ready to use this woman like he would a fleshlight and then leave her forever. Human beings are not sex toys to be traded with one another for base pleasure, okay? Even if both of the human beings consent. Evil things can't be consented to. If a woman told you it was okay to stab her in the arm, doing so would still be very, very wicked, even if she said she wanted you to stab her. You would clearly still be a terrible, awful, disgusting human being, and it would be sinful for you to do so, to inflict pain on this woman who's clearly hurting. Even if she, like, encouraged you to do it. That's just, like, common sense. The implied message of, oh, just have sex with whoever you want, wherever you want, whenever you want, as long as there is consent, is a terrible message to send to anyone, especially teenage girls who already live in a very toxic culture, telling them that it's normal and expected to have sex as young as high school, to send explicit photos as young as high school, to see boys as objects for pleasure rather than beautiful children of God, and teaches these teenage girls to use their bodies like they are pieces of meat rather than a sacred temple of the Lord. And if you disagree with that, or more likely, you're an opponent that will argue that all of those things are natural and should be encouraged in teenage girls, I don't know what to say. Like, you're a pervert. Like, and I'm praying for you, because if you actually think it's a good thing that, like, the culture is telling teenage girls, like, to have sex in high school and, like, send, like, sexual pictures, like, actually, like, that is, like, so disgusting. Like, and it makes me wonder, like, if you don't have younger siblings or, like, anyone younger that you care about. Because, like, if you do have younger siblings and you still think that that sexual, like, literally, like, encouraging teenage girls to do that kind of depraved stuff, if you think that's good, like, I'm praying for your little siblings to do it. Also, I'm calling the cops on you, because that's so fucking creepy. Like, that's literally so degenerate. So basically, that's the end of this section. Basically, everyone in this comic is, like, a hoe, and, like, basically sexual liberation was a mistake, okay? Like, I can't get over how bad of a message this is. Basically, all our heroes are hoes, and the story is just like, yeah, have sex with whoever you want, whenever you want, like, whatever. Obviously, if you don't already agree with me and you think that sex at all times, as long as there's consent, is, like, a great thing, then, like, there's no way we're gonna see eye to eye on this. And you already know, if you watched earlier in this video, what the Catholic views of sex are, and it's, like, not even just Catholic views, like, Christian views. Literally, I think, like, every major religion on the planet, like, has similar views, or at least, like, the big ones, like Judaism and Islam and stuff like that. So basically, it's just a terrible, terrible message, and I really hate it, and it's canceled. Fourth negative message from a break in space-time from an alternate universe. If someone wrongs you, you should hold grudges forever and never forgive them, and delight in their pain and lash out at them whenever possible. Let's just say that this scene, this one, it was never addressed. Okay. So, for context, for those who haven't read the comic, so Zealand just finds out that his mom is dead. Like, she died, and then this is his reaction. Like, I didn't edit this. I'm not taking this out of context. Like, this was never addressed. Like, oh my gosh. Okay, so this section is going to showcase something I know you've all been waiting for, and you all can't get enough of. It's time for more of the main characters being horrible people, like just trash heap humans. So, although maybe I shouldn't even be mentioning in that anymore since it's like a given, I did want to talk to you in this section about the weird subtext about delighting in people's pain who wronged you. So the main examples of this will be about how both of the mother characters of the two main characters, Zealand and Zilith, are treated within the story. So we're going to start with Zealand's mom. So as previously stated, Zealand's mom was an abusive parent to him and possibly his younger brother, although that fact is a little bit unknown. Like, she's never explicitly shown abusing the little brother, though if she abused Zealand, it definitely wouldn't be a shock if she abused the younger brother too. that said, the younger brother, I think his name is like Aza or something. Honestly, I can't bother to recall his name. It starts with an A. He does seem to have a better relationship with the mother, so maybe she didn't abuse him. It's unclear. And yes, this is the same mother who's actually like a supervillain. Like, I think she beat the dog to death. I don't really know. Or she just beat it, I don't know, with a stick like a crowbar. Wait, no, it was a pipe. I don't know, but like this whole crazy. Okay, so she's abusive. We got it. We got it. So basically, in the story, like, Zealand's a grown-ass adult now. Basically, one of the first things we learn about Zealand in the story is that he's had this scandal in his singing career, okay? Basically, like, he is, like, a YouTube singer. Yes, like, that's his real job, and that's, like, actual cringe, but okay. So, he was at a concert in the story, which, like, do YouTube singers get concerts? But, okay, so he's, like, famous, okay? He's in this concert. He's a YouTube singer. And this is like before the events of the story, like kind of backstory, but he's an adult and he lives on his own now and he's attending this concert. Or he's not attending it. He's like the headlining act, I guess. So basically, I don't know how this scandal was found out because this is never explained, by the way, and it's like really stupid. So basically, the scandal is it's said that his brother, his younger brother that I mentioned earlier, called him and basically said, like, mom's in the hospital. Okay. And then Zealand, instead of going to the hospital, he just to rush to see his mom, he just takes the stage for the concert and he just performs. Like, anyway, so that's the scandal. Like, somehow this information gets out, which, by the way, since I have your attention and I'm talking about this really stupid plot point, like, how did people find out? Because, like, his brother called him in a private phone conversation and, like, it's unless he announced it to the crowd, like, how would the fans know? Like, I guess it's possible a staff member could have overheard him talking to his little brother and heard the words like hospital and mom and then spread the information. But, like, I don't know. It just seems really, like, weird. Also, just to be specific, we don't know why the mom is going to the hospital. Like, it's never really stated. A short while later in the story, the mother actually dies. So maybe she was, like, put in the hospital because she had some kind of quickly, like, deteriorating illness. But, like, the mom has to go to the hospital, like, right. So I already told you about that. Gosh, I'm just, like, all over the place tonight. So basically, the scandal is, like, people know that he didn't prioritize his family over his job. And then some of the people accuse him of, like, being selfish and, like, a bad son or, like, a bad person. And he is a bad person and he is selfish, but, like, not because of this reason. So, unless his, like, also, like, like, another thing, I don't mean to, like, bring this back up, but, like, how would they know that his mom went to the hospital? Like, I'm assuming that his mom's face and likeness aren't very well known, because it's never said so in the story, and Zealand, like, doesn't like her, so I'm sure he wouldn't be hanging out with her publicly, so, like, even if they saw her being loaded into the ambulance, like, they wouldn't know it was her, so, like, how would they know he didn't stop the concert to go visit her in the hospital? Okay, I'm gonna go with my headcanon that a staff member leaked it, but, like, that's never said, so, like, I'm writing the story for the author, that's, like, a red flag. But anyway, so this scandal of him, like, going on stage to perform when his mom's in the hospital, I actually didn't have a problem with it when I first read it. See, we know that Zealand's mom abused him, and I actually thought this was an interesting idea for a scandal, and how both sides, both people who were upset at Zealand and the people who weren't, I thought they were both justifiable and understandable. See, it actually seemed like decent writing. Like, a reader would understand how some fans would be upset by this and maybe even disagree with Zealand's choice, but also with how the author, up to the point in the comic, had already portrayed Zealand as struggling. Basically, he, like, struggles with the pressure of being an idol and having people look up to him, and he doesn't want to ever disappoint his fans. He basically has, like, these really bizarre emotional issues of, like, self-hatred and resentment as a result of having to be perfect all the time. Like, I could get also that, like, some audience members wouldn't really, like, be mad at him for the scandal, and they would sympathize and understand with Zealand's desire to, like, go on with the show. You know, you put on a brave face and you go forward and you make a sacrifice. Also, it's never said if his mom is under immediate threat of dying, and if she wasn't, then what was he supposed to do? Sure, there was, like, going to the hospital to show her support would have been really amazing and wonderful, especially for, like, her and her younger and his younger brother. But, like, also, if it wasn't super serious, like, and, like, she wasn't about to die, like, what could he do to make his mom better. Like, if she wasn't in immediate danger of dying, an hour or two of him not showing up, like a lapse in time, like, wouldn't make that much of a difference. And this would show Zealand as basically having like a pragmatic side that like might seem cold to some people, but it doesn't necessarily make him a bad person. In fact, it would show that Zealand was a reasonable man. And knowing that he took off and like he knew that if he took off for his own personal family reasons to go visit his mom in the hospital, not only would he be disappointing the entire paying audience, but also any staff for the concert, and they'd be left in a difficult position. The fans that went to see him would most likely be angered and demand refunds, and it's possible that the venue and staff would take a huge financial loss. And because the author has already portrayed Zealand as feeling like he has to practically suffocate himself and his weakness for his fans already, it could totally be an understandable and interesting choice that the audience, maybe even a tragic choice, that Zealand delays seeing his hospitalized mother because of his love and sacrifice for his fans and other people, especially the fans who he sees as like relying on him. The photos of him smiling on the stage and then the comments online accusing him of being heartless could be even more tragic that way, because we know how much Zealand had to suffer to live up to that golden boy perfect image of his. So cool, right? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, you know, that's like a reasonable debate. Like, both sides are interesting. It kind of gives him some complexity. But then this scene happens, okay? He's smiling because mommy's dead, okay? So basically, that scene changed my entire perspective on this scandal, okay? And we're gonna get back up to there, but just allow me to keep reading this incoherent script, okay? So I will fully admit I've never been a victim of abuse, parental or otherwise, so I fully admit I don't have the full context of what it's like to be a victim of abuse. But I do know that if you are this sickly excited about your parent dying, you might want to consider counseling. Like, I will never tell anyone who's a victim of abuse how to feel about their abuser. They can feel however they want. But there is something very dark and disturbing about this scene, especially because Zealand has just talked to his younger brother, who's clearly upset about the death of their mother. So this is like later in the story, after the scandal and the mom dies. So like, even if Zealand doesn't hold even a single ounce or tiny piece of affection or even pity for his mother, it's kind of disturbing that he doesn't even seem to feel like sympathy for his little brother's emotions. Like, his little brother says that he's upset. And even if someone I didn't like died, if someone I did love confided in me and basically was like expressing their pain to me, I would do my best to sympathize with them and see the person from their point of view, the one that died, or at least in a neutral way, even if my opinion of that individual that died never truly changed. Like, I basically just don't think that dying people, like people dying should be celebrated in any context. Like, even if it was a great enemy of yours or someone who did some seriously messed up things, death is a time, if you don't have anything nice to say, to just stay silent and let those who did love that individual grieve in peace, because death comes for all of us eventually. Even if you did silently celebrate their death in your own house, I think there's something truly wicked about that, because like, we all die. I'm reminded of a quote. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground. For out of it wast thou taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust thou shalt return. I once again want to emphasize that I am not trying to lecture or pretend to completely know what it's like to be a victim of parental abuse in real life. But Zealand is a fictional character, and also he's supposed to be one of the good guys, at least there's no indication otherwise, within the story. And the fact that Zealand is happy about his mom's death, even though, yes, she was comically evil, it's a seriously messed up message to send to your readers. Even if someone did something bad to you, even if it was for a long time and it was truly unspeakable, you should try not to hold hatred for them in your heart. Now, if the author wanted to take a nuanced view of this and explore and challenge this idea in the story, I think that could have been very, very interesting. If Zealand perhaps had confided in Zilith about how he felt joy when his mom died, and instead of agreeing with him, Zilith was horrified and respectively explained a different point of view to him, that could have been interesting. Or maybe Zealand was happy when his mother died, but then later in the story, he has time to reflect on his own emotions and how he didn't want to feel them, but he did. Basically, I'm saying it's true that sometimes we as humans have evil thoughts and feelings. And contrary to what people who ideologically disagree with me would probably like to portray, would probably like to portray me, I actually do think there is a place in media for these uncomfortable and sinful realities to be depicted in works of fiction. For example, a young man struggling with pornography addiction may actually be benefited by a piece of media that depicts a character with the same or similar problems to him and discusses how this extremely dark issue affects this character's life and what the root causes of this issues are and how to move past it. A character like this could actually be infinitely more helpful to the personal growth of the young man struggling with the addiction than a squeaky clean character with no such flaws in that piece of media. That said, the actions and behaviors that Zealand portrays in frickin' romance are never explored in any meaningful way. His hatred for his mother is never challenged or even commented on. And once again, this isn't to say that Zealand is not entitled to his own feelings about his personal trauma. I'm just wondering what message this sends to Webtoon's younger teen girl audience that another perspective is never even shown, leaving the audience with the implication that there is nothing questionable or worthy of discussion about this emotional response by Zealand, which, to repeat, is joy and glee at his own mother's death. And Zealand is portrayed in the story as a desirable character, and this idea is never challenged, so it makes them think that this is okay. Now, bringing this all the way back to the starting scene I discussed of Zealand's scandal about whether to perform at the concert or now, basically I started with that because in light of this new info, that scene is made so disturbing. What was originally an interesting and kind of not black or white issue, it's now disturbing and honestly gives credit to what the haters were saying about Zealand all this time, like the fictional haters within the story. After we as the audience learn how much Zealand hates his mother, he is smiling wickedly at her death. We can only assume at the concert he stayed when he found out that she got hospitalized, not out of a noble sense of courage or duty to his fans, or even a serious pragmatism, but rather that Zealand genuinely did not care or feel 1 ounce of pity for his mother, nor his distressed younger brother. We are left with the most likely explanation that the pictures of Zealand smiling at the concert were not a tragic hero putting on a brave face to inspire others, but rather a sick, damaged, selfish man who was genuinely gleeful that his mother had gotten hospitalized, and that is a truly messed up message. This tells teen girls that this is the appropriate response from a desirable man. It's telling these girls that cold-hearted, vindictive glee when someone who's hurt you gets injured or dies or something horrible happens to them, you should be happy about it. And that is fine, and that might even be good. Oh my gosh, this is so disturbing. Why is this being depicted? I have so many questions about Zealand's a monster, right? I'm pretty sure he should go to jail. I mean, you shouldn't go to jail for your thoughts, but seriously, he needs serious counseling. Anyway, so we're gonna go on to the next character here. Adding on to this anti-forgiveness and pro-celebrating the pain of others who have wronged you is the plot points and the character of Zillus' mother. Also, I'm not overly surprised that both of the mother characters within this story are terrible people, as within a previous section that I mentioned earlier, either unintentionally or by design, all the parents in this comic are terrible people, and with its progressive leftist messaging, and Zillith and Viros both show absolutely no interest in being mothers, basically the left openly mock and degrade motherhood. I'm not claiming that the author thinks this that wrote frickin' romance, but it is a common leftist thing to basically openly degrade and belittle conservative or any woman who wants to have her her own volition to basically fulfill a more traditionally womanly and motherly role, and they devalue it in comparison to more traditionally masculine achievements such as success in work and career. So basically, they kind of hate mothers overall. So I'm not that shocked that both of the mothers in the story, one is portrayed as an actual supervillain-like monster, and the other one we are about to address in this section. So Zillith's mom. So Zillith's mom, while not seen as abusive necessarily in the story, she is treated absolutely brutally in the text, especially in the way that the author chooses to depict her when she's sympathetic and when she's not. So, as I already mentioned before, Zillith's mom is probably the one and only parental figure that is left, like, basically isn't portrayed as entirely abusive. So the character of Zillith's mom is not given much time in the story, but she is kind of portrayed as the least bad, but still pretty awful in the eyes of the story. So basically, we only see her in short flashbacks of Zillith's childhood from Zillith's completely skewed point of view, and then in one phone conversation she has with Zillith near the end of the comic. So in the flashback that Zillith has, the mother is seen as constantly fighting, crying, and then forgiving Zillith's father, her husband. So it's clear in these flashbacks that sadly that Zillith's mom and dad did not have a happy marriage. And Zillith, the main character, basically talks about how she was disturbed by the fact that her mom always forgave her father and over again. And while forgiveness, especially unconditional forgiveness, can be a beautiful and noble trait, I can also understand why Zillith would find it pretty damning for like the individual who's doing it. Not the forgiveness itself, but I personally don't think forgiveness can ever be bad, but it's more of the refusal to do anything but repeat the same actions over and over. For example, if a woman is being beaten by her lover and she forgives him time after time and never leaves him, not only will she be miserable and in danger, she doesn't deserve to be beaten, she might also be killed. Therefore, while forgiving the man who is clearly sick and being preyed on by the devil right now and has fallen and chosen to do evil things, while forgiving him is not wrong, the best thing to do would be to remove herself and save herself from the situation, to get help, to reach out to law enforcement, to a shelter, whatever she needs to do to be safe. And once again, this doesn't mean she can't forgive him if she wants to, which she doesn't have to. That's her choice. But it does mean that definitely one could say that unconditional forgiveness added on top of a lack of changing to one's own circumstance in situations of extreme could be very damaging for an individual. Adding on top of this other people, especially minors who have not consented to be in the situation, brings the dangerous and self-endangering and destructive activity to a moral failing, I would say. Once again, I will try to tread lightly here, and I fully admit I'm no expert in domestic abuse situations, but I do know that we, as a society, have agreed, and rightfully so, that if law enforcement finds out that there is the abuse of children in a home, that the government has a right and responsibility to remove those children from that unsafe and traumatizing environment and find them a safe place to live and be raised by caretakers that will hopefully love them. But at the very least, they need to be in a place where their physical and mental safety won't be threatened. So I completely understand why Zillith in this flashback would be horrified by her mother's actions, especially because as a child, she had to live with her mother's choice to stay. As her mother and father kept fighting, being forced to stay there in the heat of all the arguments as a minor because she's tied to her parents' law, yeah, I can understand why that would definitely be traumatizing to a child. Now, at this point, you might be wondering, okay, so you agree with Zillith then. Zillith has a right to, be upset because this was traumatizing for her, right? So you agree with her. But I thought you said that the treatment of the mother character in the story was unfair. So once again, I'm going to return to the fact that the text never goes deeper than Zillith's shallow and straightforward perspective. Well, it does make sense for Zillith in this situation to have this perspective on her mom, basically sees her as weak and sniveling and a delusional coward. I will say that in this moment, once again, this situation is not discussed by the author with any nuance, and there's no desire in the story to even explore it at all. Sure, I agree with Zillith that Zillith's mother character does have some moral failings, which can be discussed and commented on and condemned within the comic. But when I see Zillith's mother, what I see as well as her flaws which are clear and real in the character, is a woman who is a victim of abuse. She has no backbone, but she is selflessly loving. She lacks agency, but she has a great forgiveness. She made mistakes, but she does love her daughter deeply, as proven even more explicitly in the phone call she has with Zilith late in the story. Basically, the story only focuses on her negative traits, about what she did wrong, and it completely ignores her own victimhood in an abusive marriage with her husband. Now, I fully agree that a grown woman's abuse does not compare to a child's abuse. The abuse of a fully grown adult is extremely wicked and deplorable, but to abuse a helpless child is far, far worse. At least in the eyes of human morality and laws, which, yes, sometimes do falter and fail, but I think we can agree on at least those 2 points. The 2 points that we should all agree on are abuse is evil and terrible in all forms, and the abuse of children is more wicked than the abuse of adults, while both are incredibly evil. So to cap this unforgiving point, basically, I don't think it's wrong that Zilith holds some negative feelings towards her mom. I think it's wrong that the story never challenges or explores why Zilith's thinking might not be the only way to view this situation. It never comments on the fact that this is from the point of view of a scared child. Zilith is 18 in the story now, which her and Zealand's age gap is kind of creepy now that I think about it. 6 years is way too much in my humble opinion, but that's not what we're talking about, and surely that's one of the least objectionable things in this story. I think it promotes a negative message to the impressionable audience of teenage girls. Once again, the comic does not explore or challenge Zillith's ideas of her mother. Zilith is an adult now, though she doesn't act like it in the story, and it would be nice and refreshing to see her mother's issues explored in a more meaningful way that doesn't strictly cast her as an unredeemable monster, going back to the negative message of forgiveness is bad and you should revel in the pain of your enemies. Even the way the mom's forgiveness for the dad, which later we find out is really something else, but for now let's just assume that it was real, which it wasn't, but let's assume it was. The mom's forgiveness for the dad in these flashbacks is portrayed as wicked and disturbed and evil. And if this was just one way that it was presented in the story, and we had counter interpretations for a more full and nuanced look at the mother's character, that would be completely fine. But no, the mother is portrayed in the flashback just as a weak, horrid person worthy of Zilith's and the audience disdain, and there's no contrary representation of her in the story. I feel like this is a terrible message for teenage girls who might have a mother themselves who maybe doesn't stand up for the children of the house, where there's an overly critical father, or maybe even a verbally abusive relative, hopefully nothing even more deranged than that. And while obviously this is terrible for the child, this simplified and honestly very immature view may encourage these young girls to detest and rebuke their own mothers rather than trying to be mature and feeling empathy and love for her despite her flaws, because your mother is just another human being who is imperfect just like you, and a more mature and moral thing to do as you get older, which Zilith is 18 in the story already, so she is an adult, just legally an adult, but she is an adult, is to try to realize that even though they have flaws, that we should love them despite of their flaws, and realize that they're full people with their own problems too, and we should be kind to them and gentle in how we, it's really easy to be like, oh, well, if I had raised myself, or when I raise my kid, I won't do this, I won't do that. But it's a lot different when you're actually doing it, and nobody's perfect, and that's just a good thing to remember. And I feel like this story just emphasizes these one-dimensional portrayals, especially of this mother character, like she's just horrible and there's no other sides to her. So also to support my claim that Zilith just straight up hates her mom, literally, here you go. Are you looking on the screen? There you go. She literally just says it. She does. She's an awful girl. Oh my gosh. I mean, I hate Zilla so much. She's so annoying. She kind of takes back this hatred when, but only when her mother, in my complete opinion, in a completely unrealistic scene, admits that she, the mother character, never loved her father, and then she divorced him months ago. Only then, with all of the flaws nuked in an honestly stupid writing decision that takes Zillith's mom's character from an interesting, complicated, and tragic character to the fantasy fulfillment, like, that is, like, literally name any character from Steven Universe. Like, that's the level of writing we're at, okay? Basically, if you don't, like, you haven't actually read this comic, which I don't recommend at all. Basically, like, Zillith is just, like, shredding her mom. She's, like, literally verbally abusing her mother over the phone. And then, like, the mom is like, oh, I've, like, always hated your father, like, out of nowhere. And then Zillith is all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, like, she hated him this whole time. Like, maybe she's not such a terrible person. As if, like, hatred for another person, like, makes you better. Anyway, that scene was just so dumb, and I really hated it. But basically, the comic is saying only after, like, Zillith's mom does exactly what she wants, like, what Zillith wants her to do, only then is she worthy of maybe it being considered that Zillith shouldn't, like, hate her guts. Zillith's mom, like, just, like, so she basically just, you know, resolves herself of everything, the mom character, and she basically is like, I hate your dad now, which is so dumb because her whole thing earlier was forgiveness, but whatever. I just found that really stupid that all of a sudden the mom reveals she never loved the dad, just like Zillith wanted her to, and she only loved Zillith, but she stayed with the dad so she could have money from both parents, like, just like Zillith wanted to use her dad financially, like, to support her without compromising on anything that he wanted from her. That was the whole conflict between her and the dad in the first place. Literally, like, he wanted her to go to a college that he wanted to, and she said no, so he kicked her out of the house. Like, that's literally the start of this, and, like, she acts like it's such a horrible thing, and don't get me wrong, it's not a good thing. It's not like I'm like, oh yes, you go, dad character. Like, obviously kicking your 18-year-old out is a little cruel, but Zillith had money saved up, and, like, you weren't obeying what he wanted, and after you turn 18, your parents really have no obligation to keep providing for you in that way. I think, like, if you're a nice or better parent, you know, give your kid a chance to, you know, you get on their own 2 feet, you know, to just throw them out into the world. I feel is a little cruel, but it's some parents are different, and every parent is either stricter or more lenient, and sometimes there are different situations where, you know, like, they'll continue to support you if they're doing something you think is worthwhile. Like, if you're getting a college degree, like, they know that, you know, with students, it's hard to, like, pay for rent on your own, if they're going to support you because they agree with your decision. But, like, Zillith is, like, literally doing something her father, like, doesn't want to do, so he has no obligation to let her live in his house. Do I think it's mean? Yes, I definitely do. I actually would be so pissed if that happened to me, but at the same time, like, it's like, okay, that he threw you out of the house. You're 18, you had money saved up, you got an apartment pretty easily. Like, it's definitely shitty, and I can understand, like, they already didn't have a good bond, so that would, like, definitely, like, mess up their relationship even more. But anyway, that's kind of like a side tangent, but anyway. So my point is, like, that whole scene with the mother's really dumb. Like, she just announces she's, like, divorced and cut all ties with the father, like, just like Zillith wanted her to. Like, and then it's even grosser the way that Zillith is like, oh, mom, now that you're perfect, and, like, it's been revealed that you've been this way the whole time. Like, you were just pretending to love my father, which is, like, kind of fucked up, by the way. Just like all the good guys in this story are, which, like, good guys in heavy quotation marks because they're trash. Then Zillith finally considers, like, oh, maybe I actually care about my mom and I don't, like, hate her guts. Hooray. Ugh. Honestly, this is one of those, one of the only things in this comic that actually made me really angry because of how awful the message is. As I mentioned earlier, in real life, parents are not perfect angels, and there are very, very good parents and very, very flawed parents. There are even straight up abusive and wicked parents, but most people have normal parents, which means they love you, they want what's best for you, and they also make mistakes, sometimes big ones. Like, it's really dumb because in the kind of leftist mindset and in this comic, if your parent has one flaw, they're an abusive monster who deserves to never be spoken to again, and that is just patently ridiculous. All humans have flaws, and becoming a parent doesn't, like, basically, like, becoming a parent, despite all the unrealistic crap in the story, it does not magically erase any of your character flaws. Yes, there are some extreme cases in which parents are so wicked their children must be removed for them for their own child's health and safety, and that should be done in those cases, and I want it to be done in those cases. But in 99.9% of cases, parents are trying their best to be good parents and to raise their children to be good people as they get older. As children start becoming a teen and having their own ideas, a positive and more mature message is to send that to your younger audience, that you should try to understand your parents. Your parents do not deserve to be cut off from you forever, or hated or detested or mocked by you because of mistakes that they made and things that you personally don't agree with in the way that they raised you. The fact that Zilith can only now love her mother when she finds out that her mother has none of the flaws she thought her mother had her whole life just shows what a disgusting character Zilith really is. That if her mother really did have those flaws, she hated her. She literally said she held real hatred, and hatred is a serious thing. If you felt it, it's a dark thing. And I truly believe that Zilith really did hate the woman that tried her best to raise her and suffered for her. And the whole message of this, and the fact that Zilith is never challenged on this, and Zilith only ever softens to her mom when the mom obeys everything she's ever wanted. I just think that message is so anti-forgiveness. It's so disgusting. It's damaging, and it's absolutely it's astounding that no one even cares to talk about it. The lack of mercy in this whole subtext is so despicable, but maybe not surprising. I'm reminded of another quote. Whoever sins you forgive, they are forgiven them. Whoever sin you retain, they have been retained. To close this section, I wanted to address a counter-argument someone might take. They may say, well, it isn't fair to criticize frickin' romance of not exploring the themes of forgiveness and abuse and celebrating the misfortune of your enemies without any grace. We shouldn't be talking about these intelligent and themes of dignity and stuff, because maybe frickin' Romance the webcomic doesn't want to handle these things. I mean, maybe it just wants to be a fun, sexy, fantasy fulfillment, cotton stuff story for bored teenage girls and disgruntled mid-20-year-olds looking for something stupid and good-looking to read after work. To what I have to say to that is, okay, that would be a valid rebuttal, except frickin' Romance started this. It did. If it just wanted to be a fun comic, it should have just been fun. If it just wanted to have a stupid, sinful story about Zealand never wearing a shirt for unknown reasons, then it should have just been that way. But no, it itself brought up these heavy themes of abuse. They started it. The comic started it. Frickin' Romance goes out of its ways to have all these dark scenes about parental abuse and sex and one-night stands and sexual carnal and using your best friend for her body, and all these and how parents are terrible. It literally goes out of its way to include all of this super adult heavy material. And then it takes absolutely no care in the way that any of the messages that talking about these subjects it portrays. Unless all these terrible messages were perfectly left in there, which is obviously a distinct possibility, it's pure incompetence. Either way you want to slice it, the messages in this work are deeply political, divisive, disturbing, and quite honestly, they're wicked. They're wicked messages to send to your audience. So you can be like, oh, ha ha ha, you're so worked up over this silly webcomic. That's so funny. It's just for fun. Don't get so stressed about it. First of all, I'm not that stressed about it. I make YouTube videos for fun. But second of all, don't write about super serious issues like parental abuse, literally physical and emotional abuse and trauma and all this stuff. Don't write about it if you're not going to treat these subjects with dignity and intelligence and respect. Just write something lighthearted if you want to write something lighthearted, but don't bring up important and complex and often disheartening subjects that real people struggle with and then present them with all the nuance and care one gives to a brown paper bag as they stuff it into a trash can after a fast food meal. The fifth negative message from A Break in Space-Time from an Alternate Universe: the shallow and inaccurate and openly malicious depiction of people with values of traditional marriage. let's knock this one out fast because this script is already 20 pages long and I fear editing the beast of this video, okay? So basically, why? I mean, seriously, why? Like, this scene, okay, so for context, for all of you who have not subjected yourself to this comment, it is a completely random scene where Zealand and Zilith are at a party, and then Zealand kisses a gay man, I believe for a bet, I don't really know, but, like, instead of this just being, like, just stupid and fan servicey, like, well, I'm reading freaking romance, so fair enough, I expect fan servicey and stupidity, but, like, literally, this is already so dumb and random, and, like, it never comes up again, but, like, this scene would have been bad enough, but the author actually presents it as, like, a political statement, like, and she specifically takes this random scene that has, you know, nothing to do with the plot, literally doesn't add anything, literally if you removed it, nothing would change about the story, and she uses it as an excuse to kind of sit on her high horse and pretend like, I just called Snailords a she again. I mean a he. I know Snailords is a dude, so I'm sorry. I just, like, this really feels like a female wrote it, but apparently not. So, you know, I guess who says men don't like romance, you know? I mean, I'm all for that, you know? But anyway, let's get back. So basically it's a political statement, and specifically in this scene, it depicts people with traditional values of marriage in a terrible and not in good faith way. So, leftist, which I'm assuming the author is, though, like, I'm pretty sure I'd bet money on that, but I don't know with 100% certainty, so I'm not going to see that. So, leftists tend to think that people who believe in traditional values of marriage are, like, bigoted, homophobic, evil, controlling, medieval age living freaks who, like, spit at gay people on the street and are just, like, so pent up about their own suppressed sexual desires that it makes them hateful and villainous and terrible. But this is, like, demonstrably false. It's a caricature of someone who actually believes in traditional marriage and traditional sexual morality, and it's not an accurate or correct way to portray someone who actually holds these values. In the same way, certain minorities don't enjoy having their culture portrayed in a shallow way because it entirely misses the points, nuance, or even a basic understanding or respect for the culture being depicted. They do sometimes have valid complaints about their depiction. Like, for example, like Native Americans, I actually think it's valid when they don't want people to wear feather headdresses for, like, Halloween because those are, like, a religious symbol to certain tribes. And, like, it's really insulting and stupid to have somebody who doesn't understand or care to understand what that means to you and what your actual beliefs are just running around with this feather headdress on. Like, that is really, you know, I think that actually is bad, and they definitely have a right to express that. And so basically, I actually agree that over time, I think that harmful stereotypes in media can cause harm to the minority group that they represent in real life, or any group. So basically, we need to talk about how different value systems are portrayed because it can have a similar effect. Basically, to kind of prove my point, I'm going to use an example of dogs, okay? I'm sure, like, it's actually interesting because I'm not sure exactly what the political leanings of people watching this video will be. Like, most likely, if you've read freaking romance, you're probably a leftist because you're probably, like, a young girl. But if you are watching this, and you already, like, know my points of view and you're just watching it because, like, you want somebody to, like, validate your opinions, which, like, same, sometimes it's nice to do that, then you're conservative. So, like, conservatives tend to not agree with this and, like, leftists do. So, like, this is one of the issues that I, like, kind of, I don't know, I go back and forth on, or, like, I'm basically open to the discussion, but I actually do believe that repeated harmful stereotypes, like, have real world consequences. So I'm going to use the example of pit bulls. So, for example, almost all media coverage around pit bull, which is obviously a breed of dog, it's actually a blanket term for several dogs. It's almost always negative. It's usually talk about maulings or dog fighting, and how their physical physique are a potential danger to humans. And while maulings and bites by pit bulls are real things that occur, and they are, I believe, the most popular dog for illegal dog fighting, this one-sided coverage of the breed has real consequences in real life for the real life dogs. Out of 1.2 million dogs that are euthanized in shelters in the U.S. every year, around 40% of those innocent dogs are pit bulls, and they are that's a significant margin. They're the most likely breed of dog to be euthanized. The vast majority of these innocent dogs are not aggressive or dangerous or have any history of violence, but are rather just great, loving, happy, healthy dogs. But because of the treatment they receive from the media, which is inaccurate and unfavorable, basically this results in them being seen as undesirable to potential adopters, and it makes the potential adopters see them as dangerous, and this results in real world negative consequences to the dogs, because they are less likely to be picked to be adopted, and this results in more of them being euthanized because the shelters do not have the resources to care for them, which is like so sad. Also, while I have your attention on this really, really sad topic and pit bulls, I just want to say if you're moved by this statistic at all, or it concerns you and you're thinking about adopting a dog or cat, perhaps you should consider getting a pit bull or a pit bull mix from your local animal shelter or animal rescue. Pit bulls can make really amazing dogs if given the chance by a loving household. Also, if a pit bull doesn't sound right for you, consider adopting a senior dog or one with a disability or illness from a shelter or rescue center, because these dogs are most likely, along with pit bulls, to be euthanized and least likely to be adopted, and you can make a wonderful difference in their lives by seeing past their so-called imperfections to the wonderful dog that they are. And this obviously goes for cats as well. And this is like kind of, I'm going on a little bit of a rant, but even if you have no intention of getting like an older dog or an unpopular breed or a disability, that's fine. But please, please, please consider adopting a healthy young dog or cat from an animal shelter or rescue. As I stated earlier, a lot of dogs get euthanized every year, and 1.5 million shelter cats and dogs are put down every year in the US, and many, many, many of them for non-behavioral or medical reasons, but rather because there's just not enough space or resources to feed them and care for them. So breeders, no matter how responsible, are really just putting more dogs into the world when the US already has more than it can handle. Please adopt, don't shop. Even if you want a specific breed or look of dog, there are specific purebred rescues that you can find. Anyway, I'm sorry to kind of put that in this video about freaking romance. That's just a topic I'm really passionate about. Maybe I'll make like a different video about it. It's just like kind of, honestly, it does anger me a little bit. People have the right to do whatever they want. When I see so many families buying puppies from breeders, and I just think about how many dogs and puppies, but usually older dogs, even like, you know, like 1-2 years old, are just being euthanized in shelters because people don't understand like the issue and they don't care to understand it. And that's not to shame anyone, because a lot of people are just ignorant about it. Like a lot of people don't think about it. They're just like, oh my gosh, my mom, we like picked out a lab puppy from a breeder when I was a kid, so like I'm gonna do that for my children. Well, like there's nothing like technically wrong with that, but like you literally could be doing something really, really good for an animal that desperately needs you and would make a loving addition to your family. But instead, like you're just supporting this breeder who's literally just putting out more dogs into the world, when like we're literally putting down like millions of animals a year that are like completely healthy, innocent, and adoptable, and like just no one will take them. And I just think that's really sad, and like, oh, that got real depressing. Anyway, animal lecture aside, we're gonna get back to the people. Which, oh gosh, that's a little, I feel like that's a little bit of okay, so we're getting back to basically how this comic portrays people with the beliefs of traditional marriage and traditional sexual like morality, how in this comic they're portrayed extremely negatively. And this is true of the media at large, but there's no doubt that this is true in freaking romance. So while there are people who hold views of traditional marriage who are hateful towards gay, lesbian, transgender, and other members of the LGBT community, this is like a very, very small minority of people. I would say less than like 0.5%. See, I don't hate gay people or any LGBT individuals. In high school, I dated a biological female who identified as gender fluid, which I deeply regret it now. But like I used to identify as transgender male, like pansexual, like literally, like you can come for me and call me like hateful, but you're gonna lose the arguments. So you know, just be ready for that. So basically, I think LGBT people should be allowed to live their life however they choose. They shouldn't be disrespected or hated, and they should be treated with human dignity of any other person. That's like obvious, like that doesn't even need to be said, but like I guess like I did say it, but anyway, it needs to be said. I mean, like, so, but that means now in my current life, I personally don't agree with homosexuality and the LGBT agenda. Like, I just don't. Like, in my heart, it doesn't follow my religion, and that's just what I believe, okay? And for, if you were wondering, more than 31% of Americans agree with me, which is 101.74 million people. I did the math specifically. My dad did the math, but oh well. So basically the point is that people who hold views of traditional marriage are diverse, and they're of many different faiths and sometimes of no faith at all. In the scene of Zealand kissing that random dude at the party, the webcomic makes an absolute ridiculous show of him standing up for what's right and doing what he believes in. Well, first of all, I wouldn't call kissing a gay guy like to do a scandalous bet to make a woman you like you is a very like LGBT ally-like thing to do. And second of all the people who are depicted in the webcomic, like all the commenters, that they're obviously like, pro-traditional marriage in the author's world, and apparently they're just all anti-gay, and all of them are hateful, and they're just bigots with no nuance or substance to them. And that's really it. The like commenters who react to this, they're just like, ew. And then Zealand gets to puff up his chest and like feel virtuous that he cosplayed as being gay for a woman 6 years his junior who she's barely legal, and he wants to impress her, so he kisses a gay man. Gosh, I can't decide if Zealand or Zilith is a worse person in the story. Actually, it's Zilith for sure. Actually, I hate them both, but definitely Zilith. I just hate Zilith so much. I mean, I hate Zealand too. Like, they're not good people. They're not. Like, how is it V-Rose is, like, one of the best in the story? I mean, she's still questionable, but, like, literally she's, like, the least questionable stuff. I mean, like, she's a lesbian and stuff, so that's not good, but, like, literally, at least she's not, like, trash like these two, okay? She's just, like, got minor problems. They are, like, literally, like, they both scum to the core. So, they kind of deserve each other. But anyway, oh my gosh, that's so funny. I literally just went on that rant, and then I looked at my script to read the next part, and then it was just a rant about how V-Rose is the best run, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm in sync with myself from, like, 18 freaking weeks ago, or however long it took me to actually record this essay. Okay, so basically, I'm going to give an example again, although, like, I'm pretty sure you're getting the drift. Basically, if I wrote a story about a couple going to a conservative church, and then me as an author, I decided to depict that all these gay characters were standing outside the church yelling like religious slurs and insults and like calling the religious couple gross, like, and throwing things at them. Like, surely people would take issue with the way I was depicting gay individuals as like a hateful, like one-dimensional, not nuanced like group, okay? And I'm simply applying that standard fairly. People who believe in traditional marriage deserve to be treated and depicted in the media with the respect that any other group of people with certain beliefs, like the level of respect that they get, like the same amount. Like, you could deride me, but that means you're not listening at all. But you're probably like, oh my gosh, that's so nice. But you could be like, listen, your comments about the pitbulls earlier, like, Dan, like, words have consequences. So people with the view of traditional marriage should not be respected or depicted in the media as anything but harmful bigots because of their rhetoric. It, like, harms LGBT people. So you're basically throwing the pitbull example back in my face, and you're like, well, if they say negative things about pitbulls, pitbulls suffer in real life. So if people with traditional views of marriage say bad things about gay people, then gay people will be harmed in real life. So therefore, people with views of traditional marriage in media should be not respected and insulted and just portrayed as like evil. So I refute that by saying no. Unlike the unfavorable coverage of pitbulls, which, oh my gosh, you just compared LGBT people to pitbulls, so you might want to come up with something else to get me with. But anyway, contrary to the pitbull coverage, people with the traditional marriage views, they don't go around saying that LGBT people are dangerous or that they'll maul you. All that the majority of people who hold these views say is that we view the actions and relationships they engage in as immoral, and we don't think that they should be done because they're against God, the natural law, or whatever that individual who believes that's personal reason is. And there is nothing any more harmful about this than a gay person or an ally of an LGBT person stating, I believe the actions and relationships of homosexuality I engage in are completely fine, maybe even good. There's like no difference. Well, the difference between the two statements is one is right and one is wrong. But both in a free place of ideas, neither side is hurt and neither side is victimized. And barely, like, neither side is even slandered. So basically, that's my point. But just like how if someone with a traditional view of marriage said, all gay people are dangerous, it would be bad, it's equally wrong when the author of Frickin' Romance or anyone who supports gay marriage or other LGBT agenda issues says, all people who hold views of traditional marriage are stupid bigots. I hope the author hears this point, if not from me, from someone else, and educates themselves on what people who hold traditional views of marriage actually believe, and that Snailords stop spreading hateful and false lies about over 100 million people in the US alone and so many more throughout the world. People who hold views of traditional marriage don't hate gay people, so the gay people don't really need to hate us. So we can all just show respect and mercy to one another. I think that's like the best option for everyone involved, isn't it? Any impressionable young people with views of traditional marriage out there, I just wanted to let you know you're not a bigot and you are brave, and you should never cave to what is popular, and God will reward you. Let's pray for our brothers and sisters who are lost in that sin and hope that they find the Lord our God, and pray that they will find him and Jesus will be welcoming and loving to them as he always is whenever you're ready to accept him. Okay. This was a lot of ranting and surprisingly very little freaking romance. There was a whole tangent on pit bulls and the Catholic views on sex and math problems, and wow, we really did it, folks. If you watched this whole video, what a trooper. Thank you so much. I can't even believe you did that. You're awesome. If you're extremely mad after this video, I am sorry. I warned you. I hope you can at least consider some of the points that I made, and maybe you have a different perspective now that you didn't have before. With all my complaining done, I just wanted to finish saying that I actually still do respect Snailords for creating frickin' romance, even though it has some serious immoral flaws in the messages that it chooses to portray. It has some objectively great art, and creating anything artistic, especially to get featured on Webtoon, a big company, in such an official way, is very difficult, and I'm not trying to slander Snailords by saying that he purposely wanted to share these messages. And honestly, I'm just glad that I could be here to point out some of the things I think are problematic. I think us conservatives are tired of being completely blocked out of creative spaces, Hollywood movies, TV, video games, novels, even comic books and tabletop RPGs are becoming more and more ruled by leftists, and they've been ruled by that way for so long. And this media, all the media, it's giving such one-sided and unfair looks at issues, casting conservatives or anyone with that's just the tiniest bit right of center or even centrist. Sometimes a whole media apparatus just portrays them as stupid, bigoted, idiotic buffoons that are bitterly clinging to their guns and their Bibles. And we are Americans just like them, and we deserve a culture and media that treats us better. So the point of this video is, like, if you have to take something away from this, obviously frickin' romance has bad messages, and like, don't let any of your younger siblings or children read it. And if you want to read it, you should definitely know what you're getting into. But honestly, I don't think we should support works like this. Although maybe Snailords can change and write, kind of actually meaningfully explore the issues that he brings up. But who knows? We never know. We can always hope and pray for that happens, and pray for him. But I may have wanted to make this video to basically be like, not just to talk about one comic. It was to talk about this comic, but I think it gets to a greater idea. It's like, don't let the leftists bully you into the silence. Like, don't let them make you miserable. Like, when you can't watch a movie without being derided for who you are, what you believe, it's time to speak up and not be afraid. Like, being canceled, are you afraid of being canceled? The time for hesitating over a fear like that is over. Like, we are now the cancelers, okay? Just as they have done for so long, I will be canceling things on my channel, okay? I will be rightfully calling out things when they're immoral and problematic. I will be talking about their horrible hypocrisy and the bigotry that the left overlooks. And I'll do better than them. And we should all work to do better than them, because the Holy Spirit is in me and he is helping to give me the words to say. I am not going to be full of hatred from the devil as they are, because I rebuke Satan and all his wicked ways. I want to be closer and more like my Lord Jesus Christ, the Savior of the world. And because Jesus wasn't, I won't be silent, okay? This is a call to action. If you are reading a book, if you are watching a movie, reading a comic, playing a video game, if you're ingesting any media, and you realize how unfair it is to good, hardworking, God-fearing people, you see how they deride us, the people who still believe in religion and traditional values and all that stuff, it's time to stand up and say something. Don't let them bully you into not going to the movies or silently suffering while you watch a TV show where jokes are made at the expense of your faith, your skin color, or your family. We need to speak up, stand up, and be strong. The leftists are nasty and cruel and they deride us, but we are good-hearted people trying our very best to be moral. They think we are their enemies, but we know they are our brothers and sisters in Christ. Basically, that's the root of it. I am done looking at media that's everywhere and having to stay silent about what I see that is wrong. So from now on, I'm just going to be making rant videos. I'm just kidding. I probably won't be making videos like this too often because they take a lot of work, and I actually like to put like a lot of energy into stuff that just makes me happy, because these videos definitely are fun to make and I enjoy making them, but they take a lot of like, really heavy duty, like intellectual thinking that can, it can be frustrating when you're having to look at all these like messages that they're putting out that are just so horrible. But I do think it's important that we stand up and we don't hold hatred for them, but that we try to educate them and try to expose them to the Lord Jesus, because that's what he wants. He wants all of us. So, I just want to say thank you again for watching this 15-hour video essay. I have no idea how long it will end up being, but I know it's going to be super, super long. So thank you so much. I also wanted to say that stay strong. God loves you, all of you, even those who are listening right now who strongly disagree with me and are so mad at me and they just want to like punch me. I just want you to know that Jesus loves you. He wants you to come to him and share in eternal peace and joy in heaven. And I just wanted to remind everyone to be civil, strong, and let's share God's joyous word with the world and not censor ourselves, okay? All right. Thank you, everybody. I hope that everyone has an amazing day. I hope if you're struggling or you're in pain, that you stay strong and that God is with you and he is going to be with you. Just pray to him and know that you are loved and cared about and you're going to make it, okay? All right. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you so much.